Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our public forum on the Essential Services Commission's draft decision on the 2026-27 Victorian Default Offer. My name is Gerard Brody and I'm the chairperson of the Essential Services Commission. I'd like to start today's forum by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands and waters around the state and wherever you are, but for me, that is the lands and waters of the Wurundjeri people. I would like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, acknowledge their custodianship and care for land, water and country, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people here today. So before we get into the session, I'd just like to make some introductions and draw your attention to some of the important housekeeping. We are recording this forum and we will be publishing it on our website. The recording will capture all the discussion and questions from attendees, including those in the Q&A portion of today's forum. At this stage, we have disabled attendee microphones to avoid that feedback and background noise, but you will have the opportunity to unmute and ask questions during the question and answer session. We are really looking forward to facilitating that dedicated Q&A session as part of today's forum. But if you do have any more immediate questions or comments that pop up during the speaker presentations, please do type them into the Q&A box so we can respond. You do also have the option to submit questions anonymously. We also remind business representatives attending the forum of their obligations under Australian competition law and note that it must not be any discussion or comments, including in the Q&A, pertaining to market offer price changes during the session. So I would like to introduce my colleagues, my fellow Commissioner, senior leaders and Commission staff attending today. If you give us a wave, starting with my fellow Commissioner, Jess Young in attendance. Jess will be facilitating the Q&A later on. Unfortunately, my other fellow Commissioners, Ellie Patira and Rebecca Billings, were unable to attend today. But on behalf of Jess and I and our colleagues, I would like to emphasise how pleased we are to be here and hear directly from interested parties. I'm also joined by Marcus Crudden, our Executive Director of Price Monitoring and Regulation, and also Lawrence Earlham, who heads up our Victorian Default Offer and Port teams. And Marcus and Lawrence are supported today by the Victorian Default Offer project team, led by project managers Meg Harris and Sadia Khosrowshahi. And Meg will lead today's presentation on the draft decision. We are all really participating and supporting in today's forum because we do value that frank and transparent engagement with interested parties to help inform our decision making. And on that note, I'd also like to welcome our guest presenters who will speak later on. Thank you to Rory Anderson from the Victorian Council of Social Service and Joe De Silva from the Australian Energy Council. We really appreciate your contributions to the forum today. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights and your views. So I think we've got around 40 registrations for today's session, including customers. We've got representatives from energy businesses, peak industry bodies, embedded network service providers, and some government and community and consumer advocacy sector. I would like to warmly welcome you all today and encourage everyone to participate in the discussion. As I mentioned, we are here to listen to you and the views you might have on our draft decision, which of course are really critical and a key input into our decision-making process, as well as your participation today. Of course, I'd encourage you to make any written submissions that you'd like to, and that they are due by the 10th of April, and that can be made via the Engage Victoria platform. So just to quickly summarise the agenda today, as I mentioned, Meg Harris, our project manager for the VDO team, will take you through our draft decision. Then we will hear from our guest speakers, Rory and then Joe. After those presentations, we'll move into our question and answer session around 10 to 12 before wrapping up. And as I mentioned, Jess Young will host that Q&A session. I will hand over to Meg shortly to give an overview of the draft decision. But first, I just want to speak to you about some customer impacts, energy, consumer rights and protections, and the Commission's continuing focus on making sure customers are aware of and getting access to all available support. The draft video will hear it is a modest decrease, but the Commission really understands the ongoing impact of electricity prices for Victorian customers, including video customers, and there are broader cost of living concerns. And we're aware of a lot of uncertainty at the moment affecting people when it comes to key costs for households. And we also hear this from our engagement with representatives of both the energy and the community sectors. Many are on the call today, and through our work with local and state governments. And that's why upholding the rights and protections of energy consumers remains front of mind for the Commission. So helping customers navigate the energy market is important to us, and we will continue to remind all energy customers of their entitlements to support, to assistance under Victorian strong consumer protection framework. And we do know from the data that we collect and publish that there may be substantial savings for consumers when they move to their retailer's best offer. So we'll be continuing to monitor how businesses are meeting their responsibilities to inform energy consumers about those options. And of course, encourage consumers to use the Victorian Energy Compare website to find out how much they can save. And of course, we also know that retailers play that really important role in helping customers understand what support there is, whether that's payment plans, concessions, rebates, utility relief grants, and other practical support. This slide just is a reminder around retailer obligations and compliance. Where necessary, we continue to use the full suite of our regulatory tools to support and promote energy retailer compliance with the critical safeguards in place to protect Victorian energy consumers. Last year we did update our enforcement and compliance priorities, and they currently include disconnections for non-payment, the payment difficulty framework, and protecting customers experiencing vulnerability. And we've really focused on these sort of obligations under the Energy Consumer Protection Framework because they provide assistance to customers experiencing bill stress. And we want to make sure energy customers are getting the assistance they're entitled to. And we do continue to take enforcement action if we see businesses not meeting their obligations. So that's all from me. I'll now hand over to Meg to present our draft decision, and I'm looking forward to observing the discussion today. Thanks, Meg.
Thanks, Jared. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our forum. In the next few slides, I'll take you through our draft decision on the 2026-27 Victorian Default Offer. So the Commission reviews the Victorian Default Offer annually, taking into account wholesale, network, retail and environmental costs, as well as some other costs, network losses, retail operating margin, and then finally GST. In November, we sought views on specific areas of the VDO for further refinement. These areas included how we were calculating the wholesale electricity cost of exports, the tariff structure changes to residential time of use tariffs proposed by the 5 Victorian distribution network service providers, changes to market operator fee structures and the data sets for ancillary services, and the suitability and safeguard regulated zero-charge daytime residential tariff or the free power period on behalf of energy and resources. Our draft decision reflects on the submissions that were made and uses the most recent information available. Please note that we've not set a zero-charge daytime tariff or a free power period in this draft decision, as this is a matter for government to consider. So this year, our analysis shows that the cost to retailers of providing electricity in 2026-27 will decrease, about $46 for an average domestic customer. You can see from this graph, the two largest cost components in wholesale and network costs are relatively stable compared to 25-26, but environmental costs are lower. This is also an average cost stack, which varies across the different distribution zones. So as you can see from this table, the main driver of the decrease in the proposed prices is environmental costs. Wholesale electricity costs have seen a small $4 reduction compared to last year, with small decreases in future contract prices. Overall, we observed a less volatile wholesale electricity market in 2025 compared to 2024. As this draft decision explains, we will update our final decision with a more recent read of contract prices to ensure that any price increases are captured. As some of you might be aware, the Australian Energy Regulator is currently reviewing the revenue proposals for the 5 distribution network service providers in Victoria for the upcoming regulatory period, which covers 2026 to 2031. For our draft decision, we have used the 2025-26 network costs adjusted for inflation, which is why this table shows the average increase of $12 in network costs. Our final decision will include network costs for 26-27, including their structures as approved by the Australian Energy Regulator, which is due in May of this year. Overall, our methodology applied to estimating efficient costs is unchanged from last year's decision. Under the draft decision, on average, across all 5 Victorian distribution zones, a representative annual domestic bill, which is based on an assumed average annual usage of 4,000 kilowatt hours, would decrease from $1,675 to $1,629, which again is a decrease of $46 or 3%, which you can see on the right-hand side of this table. The table is showing the variation in estimated domestic Victorian default offer bills by distribution zone. The decreases are ranging from $43 in United Energy to $48 in Powercore. This mainly reflects the variation in network costs across the different zones, which, as I mentioned, are the current network tariffs adjusted for inflation. Now for small business bills, which again is based on an assumed annual usage of 10,000 kilowatt hours, this would decrease from $3,620 to $3,448, a decrease of $172 or 5%. As you can see from this graph, the driver of the decrease is also environmental costs, but we also saw a slightly more pronounced decrease in wholesale electricity costs for small businesses compared to domestic customers. This is just due to the different contract positions that the two consumer groups have. Now that I've broken down the cost movements, I'll explain the approach to the cost stack in a little bit more detail, starting with network costs. Our draft decision reflects the current 2025-26 network costs adjusted for inflation. However, our decision explains that we plan to adopt the 3-period time of use structure for domestic customers. In response to our request for comment paper, we heard support for the VDO to reflect the underlying network tariffs. So we plan to transition the current time of use tariff from a 2-period structure, which is peak and off-peak, to include the 3rd daytime period solar soak, which is from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The peak period will reduce from 3 to 9 to 4 to 9 to accommodate this new structure. Our approach to setting the time of use tariffs is unchanged, and our draft decision paper displays the usage allocation that we plan to adopt to create this 3-period tariff. We would really like to hear from you if you have any views on our approach to setting this tariff. Our final decision will use the network costs, including their structure and metering costs, as approved by the Australian Energy Regulator for 2026-27, which is expected in May. For wholesale electricity costs, we've maintained our approach to setting this cost. This includes using a load profile, which is based on customers' consumption or load only. We sought views on how we were calculating and recovering this cost in our request for comment paper. We had general agreement for including this cost without much issue on how we were calculating or recovering it. However, for the 2026-27 period, we have forecast the export volume weighted wholesale price to be overall positive. This is because the daytime price has been higher in 2025 compared to 2024. This is due to less severe negative price intervals, which could be a result of generation mix, curtailment, or bidding behaviour in the market. We recognise when this daytime wholesale price is negative, retailers incur a cost that they cannot recover from their customers who are exporting during these times. And as such, we accounted for this cost in our last decision. However, now we forecast this price to be positive overall, therefore not a cost to retailers and not included in this draft decision. As I mentioned, our final decision will take an updated contract read. Our draft decision has used future contracts up to the 6th of February. An updated contract read will also ensure any impact of global events on future contract prices is also being reflected. Now, for market operator fees and ancillary services, we sought views on these areas as well. We plan to adopt the fee structure for AMO fees in 26-27. However, they're not available for our draft decision and will be included in our final decision. We heard general agreement with using the new dataset for ancillary services, and our draft decision reflects this. Environmental costs, the main driver of overall bill reductions for our draft decision. Environmental programs can be funded in different ways. For example, Solar Homes program that provide rebates for households installing solar panels is funded by the Victorian Government. Other programs, like the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program, the Large Scale Renewable Energy Target, and the Small Scale Renewable Energy Scheme, is funded by industry, with electricity retailers legally required to purchase certificates that the program creates to meet their liabilities. To calculate the cost of complying with these programs, we use both certificate prices and annual liabilities. We use a trade-weighted average certificate price for VEU and the LREP program, and the clearinghouse price for SRES. As you can see from the graph on the left here, the VEC prices have reduced. We used $106 as the trade-weighted average in our last decision. That's now $94.62 in this draft. The LGCs, which are the large-scale generation certificates, were $35 in our last decision. They're now $15 in our draft. So there's been clear reductions in the certificate prices. Now for the liability, which is the amount of certificates that need to be purchased, that has also decreased for all programs. You can see the annual liabilities in the table on the right here. We've also made a small regulatory period adjustment, which converts the calendar year liability used in our previous decision into a financial year liability. The combination of both lower certificate prices and lower liabilities has contributed to the decreasing cost of complying with these environmental programs for 2026-27. So for all other costs, we've maintained our approach to setting these, and I've just stepped you through the outcomes of these approaches. I would like to remind electricity retailers and embedded network providers that last year's price determination, so for 25-26, we changed our compliant maximum annual bill from being calculated based on time of use to being calculated on a flat rate tariff in line with our pricing order. This will be reflected again in our price determination for 26-27, so this is just a short reminder. Our draft decision is open for consultation and submissions close on the 10th of April. We'd like to hear from you on any elements of the video that you have a view on. You can make a submission via Engage Victoria, or you can email us directly. As I mentioned, our final decision will use updated information, including more recent future contract reads for wholesale costs, updated certificate prices for environmental costs, the new AMO fees and their structures, as well as the approved network tariffs, including their structures, approved by the Australian Energy Regulator. So this was our draft decision. I'd now like to introduce Rory Anderson, Policy Officer at the Victorian Council of Social Service, which is a consumer advocacy organisation who worked with other consumer groups on a joint submission on the VDO. Over to you, Rory. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. Yes, so I'm Rory Anderson. I'm from VCOS, the Victorian Council of Social Service, the peak body of the social and community services sector in Victoria. And yes, as Meg mentioned, I'm going to take you through the submission that we made with a few different organisations to the VDO 26-27 consultation. So we'll proceed to the next slide, please. So yes, it was a joint submission with a few different organisations participating, those being the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, Community Information and Support Victoria, Consumer Action Law Centre, Council on the Ageing Victoria and Seniors Rights Victoria, Energy Consumers Australia, Financial Counselling Victoria, Uniting VicTas, and West Justice. So this is a group that really brings a deep knowledge of people's experiences navigating the Victorian electricity market and the impacts of energy hardship and poverty more broadly. And I really wanted to shout out all of these organisations and the people who worked on the submission with me, as it was a real pleasure, obviously, bringing it together. Next slide, please. I think we've skipped ahead a couple of slides, but we'll miss one. So I'll just note that before continuing, all of these organisations and VCOS conduct their business on the sovereign unceded Aboriginal land in Victoria. That's the lands of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of country. And obviously ECA do a bunch of their work as well on the land of the Gadigal people. So just before proceeding, I want to pay my respects to ancestors and elders as well. But yes, for this slide, before summarising our submission, I just wanted to say a few words in response to the draft decision from the ESC. VCOS certainly welcomes the draft decision, which would reduce costs for consumers on the Victorian Default Offer by 3% on average. I think it's important to emphasise that we've seen an upward trend overall in the VDO price since the establishment in 2019. Of course, a major driver of that being a very large increase in 23-24, and reductions since then have only made sort of relatively small dents in that increase. I think we would emphasise that plenty more work is needed to make sure Victorians can get their energy needs met at an affordable rate. The Victorian community sector often sees many households struggling with their bills every day, having to make difficult choices about what to preference when the bill comes in. Some are racking up significant debt, some are rationing their energy use to potentially dangerous levels, and others are going without other essentials like medicine in order to pay bills. And in many cases, the underlying reason is that for many of the people we support, incomes are just not sufficient to cover costs once all bills are factored in. So while we certainly are pleased to see any reduction in the VDO, we'll be waiting to see where the final decision lands, to see whether the reduction remains once other inputs are factored in. And of course, we'll be continuing to emphasise the need for improved support in general for low-income households and those experiencing hardship and vulnerability. Next slide, please. So in our joint submission, we firstly wanted to emphasise our strong support for the continued operation of the VDO and the work that the ESC does each year in reviewing the default offer. We view the VDO as a really crucial regulatory safeguard for consumers that find themselves on a standing offer, and a crucial price cap for customers in embedded networks. We believe the VDO has been successful in its objectives, especially in eliminating unreasonably priced standing offers. I think it's a well-established fact, but worth reiterating, that the electricity market is quite complex for consumers and difficult to navigate. Most consumers don't really think in terms of cents per kilowatt hour, but in terms of what they use energy for. And in many ways, for that reason, consumers don't really follow the logic of the competitive market. In this context, I think the VDO works to help people safely navigate the market, and it protects people who don't engage by providing a trusted and reasonable price that has been set through an open review process. Next slide, please. So yes, as was commented on, a new aspect of this year's review was the request for comment on the free power period concept, and also the shift to a 3-price time of use tariff. I'm going to comment on these together in the interest of time, although obviously they're separate and we treated them as such in our submission. Firstly, the free power period and other types of price signalling could assist many consumers to reduce their energy costs by encouraging midday usage when solar is abundant. And we do hope that this can be a way that people without solar can benefit. In our submission, we did support the inclusion of a free power period under the VDO and a move to the 3-price time of use tariff, if this is the direction that market offerings are heading. If these are the types of tariffs we can expect in the market, we believe there should be an equivalent VDO tariff to act as a benchmark and a signal to the market as to what a reasonable and efficient price is. But we did want to strongly emphasize the difficulties that many consumers face in shifting their energy use out of the evening peak. Price signals like these expect a level of responsiveness, agency, knowledge and capacity that many consumers simply don't have. In reality, many people face significant structural barriers to changing their usage behavior. These include living in energy inefficient homes, life circumstances that make active management of energy use difficult, such as employment hours, health conditions, and mental health or disability. So some policymakers around this development in the market have been spruiking the equity implications of price structures like free power periods. I think we'd strongly state that tariff structures like free power periods should be treated merely as price signals, not more, and they certainly shouldn't be treated as instruments of social policy. So finally, in our submission, we did lay out a few suggested regulatory safeguards for free power periods if they were to progress, those including opt-in application for this type of tariff, better off price guarantee based on a reasonable benchmark, easy switching back when consumers find they're paying more compared to their previous tariff, access to a simple flat tariff that consumers can move to at any time, and requirements for bill comparisons between a consumer's current offer and a free power period that should be based on actual consumption behavior as it exists, not assumed behavior change. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a case study, one of a few that we added to our submission provided by participating organisations. This one came to us from a financial counsellor and was provided by Financial Counselling Victoria. And I'll just read it to you. I'm working with a client who had been paying $83 per fortnight through bill smoothing, yet still accumulated $1,800 in energy debt in just 12 weeks. She's a victim survivor of family violence, caring for 3 children, living on a very low income, and the debt is simply unmanageable. Her mental health is fragile, and every call to the energy retailer leaves her overwhelmed. Like many of my clients, she prioritizes energy bills over other essentials, often before food, medication, or accessing healthcare. The result is worsening health, untreated mental health issues, and constant financial anxiety. Cases like hers highlight low energy unaffordability pushes vulnerable families into crisis. Next slide, please. So experiences like these have led community organisations to the conclusion that much more work is needed outside the VDO review cycle as well to create true affordability for the communities we support. Next slide, please. And so in light of that, some measures that we have put forward through our submission and previous submissions and indeed our wider advocacy include continued strong consumer protections and regulatory reform, such as we did see with the recent round of review of the Energy Retail Code of Practice, increased access to home energy efficiency improvements and electrification, more renewables in the generation mix to drive down wholesale prices, and of course, a powerful tool would be increased income support payments at the Commonwealth level. And finally, a consideration by policymakers of intensive targeted support mechanism, such as a social tariff for energy. Next slide, please. That's all I had. So thank you for listening, and I will hand back to you, Meg.
Thank you so much, Rory. So I'd now like to introduce Joe De Silva from the Australian Energy Council. The Australian Energy Council is the peak industry body for electricity businesses operating in competitive retail energy markets, including those businesses operating in Victoria. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Meg. Look, thanks very much to the Commission for having me here today to present. So if you could just move to the first slide, I'll just give you a very brief overview of the Australian Energy Council. The council is the peak body for electricity and downstream natural gas businesses, and these businesses operate in the competitive wholesale and retail energy markets. On the slide, you'll see a little bit about the AEC, which is what we refer to ourselves as. Next slide, please. So the announcement of the VDO draft actually is a really good time for customers to think about whether or not they're on the best deal available for their circumstances. And we really encourage customers to go to Victoria Energy Compare and see how your current offer compares to other offers in the market. There are a range of very competitive market offers available to customers in Victoria. So we do really encourage you to make the most of the Victorian Energy Compare website, which is available. And that website is actually listed on this slide down the bottom. But you can easily find it just by Googling Victorian Energy Compare. Next slide, please. So we're aware that there are some shared needs and values amongst all customers, and the VDO is one of the types of offers that are in the market that actually meets those needs, but it's not the only one. So things like simplicity and affordability are very commonly shared by all customers. Also things like fairness and equity and customer protections, like we've already heard about. So it's important that we recognise that the range of offers available to customers in the market do reflect these shared needs and values. Next slide, please. What we're trying to really draw customers' attention to is the fact that opportunities for awards for participation are actually increasing. So this slide talks to a range of different types of offers that are available in the market and different products and services which customers can benefit from. So these include emerging CER technologies, things like smart and digital management technologies and set and forget devices. And these can all help customers better manage their energy costs. Next slide, please. So retailers are very keen to evolve as customers' needs change and transform. And what we really see ourselves as becoming enablers of consumer participation as the system moves to being increasingly decarbonised. So in order to do that, there's a variety of things that we do and will need to do. And these include providing energy services that deliver value and meet customers' needs, making our customers' interactions with the energy system as simple as possible, and helping integrate customer energy resources in the energy system. So all of this is really built around supporting and empowering customers to actively participate in Australia's transition to net zero. So this story about what retailers are aiming to get to is an important part of a conversation around the VDO. So customers can access the VDO and the protections that it provides, but increasingly as we move to towards 2050 and a decarbonised system, there will be more and more different offers that customers can access, and we really encourage customers to access those offers. Next slide, please. We understand that customers are diverse, so there's not just one type of customer, and it's really important even when thinking about the VDO, that there are different types of customers who access the VDO. This slide talks to a different segmentation approach to what customers might look like, and it's really an engagement spectrum. So as you move from left to right, customers are increasingly more engaged. So I suppose in terms of the VDO, there may be a variety of different reasons why a customer moves to the VDO, and the engagement spectrum might help explain some of those reasons, but there might also be other reasons why a customer moves to the VDO. Next slide, please. In terms of the draft decision, there are a number of positives which we welcome from the draft. Certainly lower prices for customers due to lower environmental costs. We do really recognise that it is a very difficult time for people at the moment, that cost of living pressures are very real, and we do really understand those pressures on households. And, you know, at a time like this, the lower prices for customers is seen as a positive thing. We also welcome the stable methodology that the Commission has used. This has been a notable feature of the Victorian Default Offer. The methodology has been stable from year to year, and that's something that retailers have certainly welcomed. We also welcome the pass-through of uncontrollable costs. We think that it's a really important measure that the Commission is providing. Finally, we also welcome that there is not going to be a regulated solar sharer tariff, or that was not recommended by the Commission. Next slide, please. In terms of the solar sharer regulated tariff, as I mentioned, we support the draft decision not to introduce this tariff. Regulating these types of tariffs is fraught with risk, and we really worry about the customer benefit and the potential for only a few customers to benefit. So we agree that setting a time of use tariff based on network solar SOAP tariff allows customers to take advantage of lower price daytime periods. And we note that some retailers already offer solar sharer style tariffs. This is done at retailers' own risks, and it's much more suitable for both retailers and customers. Next slide, please. So we do have some concerns with the draft decision, and they are listed on this slide. We are concerned about the lack of accounting for solar exports, the continued squeeze on retailer margins, and also the timing of the final network time of use tariffs. So the AEC intends to respond to the draft decision, and we will be highlighting these concerns in our response. Look, in closing, I'd just like to thank you very much for having me present today, and I'm certainly available to answer questions in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jo. And hi, everyone. Yeah, really appreciate the insights you've given there. And I think there's already some really great questions coming through. So we'll now move to the Q&A section of the forum. So it's just a reminder that you can either raise your hand to ask a question using the function in Teams, or you can pop it into the Q&A box, as a number of you are doing. So if we do get similar questions, we'll try and answer them in one go. And obviously, if some of the questions go to things that are slightly outside of our scope in this video decision, then we'll pass those, pass those and come back to you later, or provide just a limited answer. So, all right. So we've got a couple of really good questions to start with. So I'll start with the first one, which is around network prices. So the question is, how have you been able to use the 2025-26 network prices when they don't have the same structure as the 26 to 27 prices? There is no 25-26 three-part TOU structure network tariff, so how did you create one? So it's a really good technical question. So if you have a look at our draft decision, we don't actually present tariffs in our draft decisions for the VDO. Instead, we present bill outcomes. And so these bill outcomes are presented using flat rate calculations. We don't actually do time of use tariffs with the draft. So it is something that we'll do for the final. And by the final, as you know, the AER structure will be out. I would point out that in our draft decision, we do include a little bit of information about how we intend to do that. So I think it's on page 20 of our draft video decision. We break down there how we're planning to allocate costs into a three-part tariff rather than the two-part tariff that we've done before. So hopefully that provides the answer that we're looking for. I'll move on to the next question now. So the next question is, why did the Commission decide not to include a free power period when the department specifically asked the Commission to consider it? Saying it's a matter for government doesn't seem to be an adequate response to being asked to consider. Also a really good question. So we were asked to consider and consult on the notion of a free power period as part of our 26-27 VDO consultation process. And as part of that, we've collected submissions from all stakeholders and shared those submissions and our thoughts on that with government. The reason why it's a policy matter for government to consider is actually related to the bounds of our powers and ability through the VDO and the price regulation frameworks more generally. So we actually don't have the ability to impose price regulation without an order in council from government. And I guess, you know, the incorporating it into the VDO pricing order is complex because the free power period, if it is to be an opt-in, if it was introduced and to become an opt-in product, that doesn't really align with the VDO order, which sets up a default offer, which is not an opt-in arrangement. So there's a number of sort of technical legal barriers to us introducing a free power period in the short term. So hopefully that helps to answer the question. We've got a couple more questions that have come through, which are probably most suited to Joe, if that's okay. And hopefully you've had a bit of a look at this, Joe. But the first question is that Joe usefully encouraged customers to use the Victorian Energy Compare to ensure that they are getting the best deal. How frequently do customers need to do that to ensure that what they thought was the best price when they signed up still is the best price? I might pass to you, Joe.
Yeah, no problems, Jess. Thank you. Look, I think that's really a matter for customers to determine for themselves. Certainly, we tend to talk about the best deal available for that customer's circumstances. So I guess we encourage customers to think about what are your personal circumstances, you know, how do you use energy, when does it change, you know, and those types of things. And also keep an eye out for your bills and how you're tracking. And I guess, you know, the Victorian Energy Compare site is there. It's a free site. There's no charge for using that. So customers are really encouraged to use that at times they feel are suitable for them. I don't use Victorian Energy Compare because I'm not based in Victoria. I'm based in South Australia, but I use a very similar website. So I use it at times when I feel that it might be of benefit to me, and I encourage customers to do the same.
Thank you, Joe. So the next question is also probably a good one for you to answer as well.
Yeah.
So Joe, you said that retailers are aiming to be trusted by customers. What does the latest research say about customer trust of retailers?
Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't seen any really the latest research on this. I know that retailers do regularly survey their own customers, and that each retailer has deep insights into their trust and satisfaction levels of their own customers, and they act accordingly. What I would say is that the Australian Energy Council has really, over the recent years, recognised that affordability is a major concern for customers, and it does really impact on trust levels. And we're planning to do a really focused amount of work around affordability. So we are developing a series of actions that retailers can take to actually address affordability concerns of their customers. And we're looking at how retailers might go over and above their regulatory obligations to support customers who needs extra support. So there's a series of initiatives, including going over and above regulatory obligations. And we hope that by actually doing these things, we will start to build trust with customers where it currently doesn't exist, and build on the trust that does actually exist. So we really hope to elevate those trust levels. We do really recognise that trust is a key concern of customer advocates and also decision makers. So we really hope to work closely with customer advocates and decision makers to identify ways in which this trust can be built and grown where it currently exists.
Thanks very much, Jo. We've got one more question that's come through so far, and that is, will we get to see Frontier Economics 2026 wholesale electricity costs for 26-27 draft report for the ESC? The good news is that's already available on our website. So it's the draft report and aligns with our draft decision, which will be updated with the final report alongside our final decision coming up. So I think someone's going to post a link in the chat for that one. I think I can see one hand up. David.
I put my hands up if that's the one you're seeing, David Prince.
That's the one. Hi, David.
Thanks. And I asked that last question on trust, as you probably saw in the comments. Jo, I'd just say that if you've got an objective as an organisation to have trust, then one of the things you really ought to be doing is measuring it. That's just an aside. Now, look, my question was prompted from an answer, Jess, that you gave just before about opt-in. So I'll declare that I'm professionally involved in the Queensland determination for what's called notified prices for the Ergon Energy area. And one of the things there is going to be whether or not they have a free period. And obviously it impinges on the AER's work as well, etc. So I was curious at the answer, and I live in Victoria, so I'm interested there as well. I'm curious at the answer that you can't do opt-in. So how does that work between the flat versus the TOU tariff? Yes, it might in the first instance, the retailer might in the first instance prefer to serve the customer based on what their network tariff is, but actually it's the other way around, because the customer can request the retail tariff and then the retailer can request the network for the appropriate underlying network tariff to support it if they want to. So how does that work when you've got two tariffs? Is one default and one opt-in? I didn't quite understand the answer because it didn't seem to work in the fact that there's already two tariffs.
Yeah, thanks, David. That is a really good question. Yeah, I might actually pass to someone in the team who might be better placed to respond to that. Perhaps looking at Marcus or anyone else who'd like to have a go at that.
Rather than put somebody on the spot, I'm happy to talk to somebody afterwards.
Yeah, the alternative is we take that one away. Yeah.
I can certainly have Marcus is jumping in. Yeah.
Thanks, David. I think happy to come back to it. I think you might be also referring to some of how the AER may have looked at their tariff design in their decision last week. We're looking at that, but we do, I guess, set two charges when we do the network costs. If people are on an underlying flat rate, we apply the flat. If they're on an underlying time of use tariff, we apply the time of use tariff.
Yeah, but as I said, I often see things about customers choosing their network tariff, and it's just totally untrue. Customers do not choose networks. I don't mean the SE says that. The press says that. All kinds of people say it. Customers do not choose network tariffs. Retailers choose network tariffs. Customers choose retail tariffs. So saying you put somebody on a particular retail tariff because they're on a particular network tariff is putting the cart before the horse, although it happens all the time. I go to Victorian Energy Compare, I put in my NUMI, it immediately says, David, you're on a time of use. I'm going to show you time of use prices. Yes, I can change a click in the box to see flat ones if I want. And I have checked with my network if I wanted to move to a flat tariff with a retailer, and the retailer said only if you're on a network tariff. The network tells me, no problem, get your retailer to ask for it. So there's sort of things are not quite in the right sequence here.
Thanks, David.
I'm happy to talk with you or one of your people afterwards.
Yeah,
They're where the primary markets.
Yes, I think I understand the issue you're raising.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a critical one. And as I said, I want to take up more time here. I'll be happy to talk to you after. Thanks.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate that. It's a really tricky area. Just wanted to give a chance for anyone to ask any other questions they might have. There are any? I think I don't have any other questions, but I think I might pass back over to Jared then. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks so much, Jess, and thanks to everyone for their questions and contributions, and it's really helpful, as I mentioned, to have your questions and have those discussion. I really found it valuable to sort of hear firsthand from everyone. I guess in terms of just a recap of today's discussion and themes, Rory, thank you for your presentation, the importance of video as a pricing safeguard, and recognizing that even with this year's draft decision being a modest reduction, many people are still struggling with bill pressures, and more work needs to be done to support vulnerable customers. And I heard you say that, including things like a social tariff. And Joe, thank you as well at the Australian Energy Council. Also supported the expected price reductions for customers, as well as stability in the VDO's methodology. So thank you for that feedback, but also raising some of those concerns like the treatment of solar exports and margins. So we'll look forward to the AEC submission there. We also heard today some of the observations and questions about the free power period, including the Commission's role, expected benefits for customers, the need for customer safeguards and opt-in arrangements, and impact of network tariffs as well. That was just raised towards the end there. So thank you for those points. There was also the question, of course, around our approach to setting network costs in our draft decision, given the expected change to a three-part tariff structure. I think, thanks, Jess, for responding to that one. We'll, between now and the final decision, will be the AER's final determination around the network pricing determination. So that will directly feed into our final decision as well. And we also heard this morning broader issues like the use of Victorian Energy Compare, overall trust in retailers, and thanks, Joe, for flagging the further work that the AEC intends to do around affordability and support of customers. We're very interested to find more about that in due course. I'm sure everyone on the call will be, so thank you very much. Thank you also to the commissioners and all the commission staff, that both those behind the background and also Meg for your presentation, who put today's session together. If you haven't already done so, we do encourage you to make further comments or provide that formal submission. And as I mentioned, they will continue to be made until the 10th of April via Engage Victoria. And if you do have any other comments or queries or feedback about today's session, please do get in touch with the video team by emailing vdo@esc.vic.gov.au. Thanks everyone for taking the time to attend the forum, and we'll close it there. Take care and thanks again.